Some content in this video may be heavily edited for content appropriateness. Viewer discretion may be suggested. Also, for those who haven't watched this series, then please be aware for spoilers. Watch it at your own risk. Well, it took a while for me to make this. So anyways, hello viewers, and it's been a while since I haven't done a review like this. But yeah, so welcome to another video here on this channel, and interestingly, this is going to be a very long one, I might say, because there are a lot of events that really shocked me, I might say. So for today's review, I have accomplished the entirety of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. And yeah, there were some challenges when I was about to watch this. Procrastination have made it happen. Of course, I was busy with other important stuff. And yeah, that's basically what it is. Also, a change in development because actually my Disney Plus account wasn't mine. It was actually my aunt's, who decided that they will not renew because of those, she said, financial burden of some sorts. But for that reason, I decided to switch to an, I don't know what I have to say here, but I don't want to disclose much, but yeah, but needless to say that I did watch all 8 episodes. But yeah, there was a lot that really happened during those 8 episodes, and a lot that really happened. Yeah, there were a lot, of course. And yeah, I don't want to disclose that much because this is totally, like, there was a lot of spoilers there. So yeah, brace yourselves everyone, because this is going to be a huge review, guys, that I haven't even done in a while. So with that matter, let's get this review started, because I don't want to wait for a little long to make it happen. So the second season of this show, which premiered on March 24th, was basically a continuation of what really happened in season 1, as you may know. And we just stopped at, you know, Fisk getting his so corrupt mayor thing going on, and Daredevil was about to set up his own army. And yeah, that's basically where we stopped. But in this season, it gets interesting as Mayor Fisk crushes New York underfoot as he hunts down public enemy number 1, aka Daredevil, of course, which, beneath the horned mask, Murdoch, which of course, as you may know, is played by Charlie Cox, will try to fight back from the shadows to tear down the Kingpin's corrupt empire and redeem his home. And there are 3 R's, if you want to remember about that, because these 3 R's are basically what will the story will talk about, and keep note of that. So resist, rebel, rebuild, and those 3 things are basically what have powered up what really happened in this season. And there were a lot of things that really happened. But first off, we're gonna talk about info per se, because as you may know, this season was first announced on August 10th of 2 years ago, and yeah, it premiered on Disney Plus 2 years later on March 24th. Now, on that side, of course, as you may know, production side, it is production came around at least throughout 2025, I might say. But yeah, and as you may know, most of the cast of the first season have returned. However, some others have been upgraded, such as, you know, Karen Page is now a main character, surprisingly. And yeah, and also there were some interesting developments, like Jessica Jones coming in this show is kind of crazy, like totally crazy, at least for a few episodes, but interesting. But yeah, there were a lot of things that really happened during that season. But yeah, I don't want to discuss that much because I have a review to discuss. So there are 8 episodes, of course, 8 in total, from the Northern Star, which is the first episode of the second season, to the Southern Cross, which is the season finale. And season 3 is currently in development right now, but yeah, it is still in filming as of the time I'm recording this video, and that's from what I can tell from, you know, the media source. But anyways, with that matter, let's get started with the first episode, titled The Northern Star, named after the ship that is capsized. Wait, whatever the thing is. But anyway, so what really happened is that Daredevil was in hiding, but he isn't laying low, which is the synopsis for this thing. However, a shadowy player, which is this guy is a certain person played by Matthew Lillard from Washington DC emerges. Yes, Matthew Lillard is in this show for some reason. I don't know why, but this is weird. But what really happened in that episode is kind of a bit crazy, as you may say. But yeah, what really happened is that Daredevil was in the Northern Star, you know, the side pivot container ship, which is smuggling weapons to the Wet Hook port, of which Kingpin controls. And yeah, that is, you know, but Achilleo Kayako, the captain, has decided to sink the ship before evacuating with Christophe Sava. And after which they literally survive, so did Daredevil, and he decided to return to Josie Spar, actually regrouping with Kevin, his former partner, with Nelson, Murdoch, and Page. And we still feeling the side effects of August's murder in episode 1 of season 1, by the way, but yeah, but you know, this is unfortunate. But on the other hand, you know, the ship is still capsized, however, it's still intact. So Mayor Fisk decided to check around and see what's going on there. And Fisk said that this is a terrorist attack perpetrated by Daredevil for some reason. Yes, he's still falsifying that, and orders the AVTF, the Anti-Vigilante Task Force, that's led by, Connor Powell, I remember, to organize salvage efforts while intensifying the manhunt for Daredevil or Murdoch and Page, of course, which is basically what it is. But yeah, on the other hand, the AVTF is basically a little around for some reason because, yeah, they are looking for, you know, that. But yeah, and because of the terrible development of Fisk, of course, you know, Attorney General and Lieutenant Governor decided to visit, where they expressed their disapproval of Fisk's conduct in regards of the Safer Streets Initiative, which have been around for 6 months in this time. But yeah, however, Fisk dismisses their accusations and assured them that the culprit in the Northern Star attack would be brought to justice, which would make sure that this office might scrutinize his vigilante trials, whether he likes it or not, which is kind of a bit weird. Also, that Mr. Charleston suddenly walks into an office, CIA representative. Well, that's something. And yeah, but on the other hand, of course, we have the vigilante trials, which is an important thing that really happened throughout the season. As you know, Jack Duquesne is fighting for you know, his trial. Of course, that's the Vigilante Trials, which Heather Glenn conducts a psychological evaluation, of which Glenn is still traumatized after, you know, news. Yeah, of course, but you know, yeah, on the other hand, there was a lot of things that really happened. But yeah, the trials is kind of a bit crazy like there, but we're gonna get to that in a moment, okay? So on the other hand, let's just move forward to what really happened in that episode as well. So McDuffie decided to get some legal support to the people targeted by Fisk and the AVTF. Then Cherry decided to talk to a disguised Murdoch to discuss about the ship. And then, of course, as we know, following the AVTF arrived to that restaurant, Aegon Gardens, and confront Ariana Yakovu to discuss demanding her to provide information on Kyriako and Safas' whereabouts, of which Kyriako has taken by the AVTF into custody, which is unfortunate. And yeah, and Ariana's eventually approached by Murdoch, who talks about it, and eventually it was there where Ariana said that if the AVTF is after Safa, yeah, Murdoch would not be able to save him, but he's still determined to do so, at least for now. But yeah, then Kyriako was eventually killed by Buck Cashman, which is Fisk's aide, of which it still talks about the, you know, the incident, but yeah, I might say. And then we decide to have a couple of last things, of course, before we stop here. Of course, Mr. Charles talks to Wilson and Vanessa at the Crazy Mansion, and talking about the not so great development, of course. And then hold on. Hold on. What was I supposed to say here? Well, Glenn then decided to examine the results of Duquesne's evaluation, of which, yeah, this is crazy, but yeah, Duquesne, this one is very alright, I might say, but yeah. And then once we are, we step to sequences here, but yeah, Murdoch then decided to train with Page and tell her what about what he learned from Ariana, and Page asks him if he misses his past life and the work at the law firm back when Foggy was still alive, though. And yeah, however, by the way, Ariana was approached by a man who was actually Sava and tells Ariana that he was on an orders and that he needs her help, of which, yeah, that really happened. But yeah, Cherry was about to get attacked by the AVTF, talking about the whereabouts of these two, but Daredevil was to save Cherry, but someone decided to, I kid you not, get around. Yes, you're that right. There was someone that literally saved Cherry and Daredevil for some reason. Yes, and Daredevil did save Cherry, as the AVTF wanted to bring him down, but someone, that is Bullseye, yes, we know, has decided to shoot that and a knife put it on it, which was a shock for Daredevil, which is kind of a bit crazy. That episode is very crazy. Like, I might say, there were a couple of things that really happened in that episode. Like, first, there were some developments with some of the parts here, but I can't remember since I finished watch that. But yeah, it's interesting that Fisk is still having some grudges with his work, but it is what it is. Also, it's really interesting to see the relationship between Murdoch and Page still coming around, which is very interesting. And Mr. Charles, this is kind of a bit weird. But anyways, on the Daredevil side of things, well, he did try to save his life, which is very great. And the way that he saved Cherry is interesting, though. Like, he literally tried to save him, but someone outside has literally saved kept him alive, which is very weird, like totally weird. So this was a very crazy episode, I might say, and a crazy start, but it is what it is. So at least there was some interesting moments that really happened, but yeah, there's nothing else much to say about it except that this was an A- caliber of an episode. Episode 2, that is titled Shoot the Moon, is where Fisk tries a new tactic to lure Daredevil out of hiding, of which he somehow decided to, I kid you not, do and search for Matt Murdock. You heard that right, he literally did that. But back to the development, though. Cherry is hospitalized in a critical condition, of which he's still alive, which he did. And on the other hand, yeah, of course, Benjamin Poindexter comes to Clinton Church and asks for Maggie Grace, as he's in need for absolution for all that he has done, which is, of course, the crimes that he commit. Killing Foggy by orders of Vanessa, or whatever this thing is, and other stuff, and like he really did with that, saving Daredevil for some reason. But yeah, and seeing that Daredevil getting away and Bullseye being involved, well, that's something. But now, with that matter, let's get back to Josie's. So, as you may know, Murdoch and Cameron discussed what really happened, why Bullseye got involved, but did not kill Daredevil when he had the chance. Which is crazy, because Murdoch suggests that Bullseye killing the AVTF officers benefits Fisk, as he can pin their dance on Daredevil, but also frustrates Fisk as well, of which is in Bullseye's favor, of which, yeah, Page is still in hate for him. But, yeah, however, Christopher Sava, well, unfortunately, well, that's not so great, because Ariana Yakovu was captured by the AVTF. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But on the other hand, let's take a look at Fisk right now. So as you may know, he literally, as I mentioned earlier, he literally addressed the people to find a missing, to help with finding a missing Murdoch, of which describing him as a hero who needs to be brought back home. Which, yeah, Murdoch and Peach decide to hide. Yeah, on the other hand, which is kind of a bit odd. Also, whatever this city without fear thing, that's somehow organized by a certain someone that is actually, didn't know it was actually Ben Urich's daughter of some sorts. But whatever is going on here. But but Shayla and Daniel decide to examine that for that, which somehow satirize and mock Fisk, which is kind of a bit weird about that. But and also Sheila did bring up the Northern Star footage as well, of which Blake confirms that the only people in Fisk's circle had access to it, meaning they have a leak. Whatever is going on here, this is crazy. And yeah, and also Paulo had decided to stop by the hospital where Cherry was there, but however Bullseye literally took him out. And yes, that really happened. And also noticed back after it was recovered, but as I said, Cherry was taken by Bullseye after was targeted by a couple of AVTF officers though. So yeah, Angie and James' friends from the NYPD were being watched over though. But yeah, for some reason. But yeah, the vigilante was so likely to be involved in this, which is crazy. But whatever's going on here, this is odd. On the other hand, well, yeah, Fisk talking to Blake about the whatever campaign this is, and on the other hand, this is some crazy development. But let's move on to the Red Hook point development, where Murdoch and Page decide to sneak in to look at the crates, of which there are basically diapers for some reason instead of weapons. I don't know why, but that this was a misdirection for the union workers and the press that also witnessed the unloading, so they decided to take a peek when Fisk thinks no one is watching though. However, by night, well, this was crazy, but we're gonna explain that in a moment. But because at night though, AVTF handling the offloading of weapons of the ship, and yeah, this is crazy. So let's move on to to talk about low development with Angela and Soledad. The so close relatives of the late Hector Ayala. Rest in peace to the actor who played it. But yeah, and Del Toro claims that he was even being one is dangerous, so as she herself would be dead if not the hero for saving her, which she literally discussed about Murdoch's disappearance. Though they decide to stop by a local bodega and notice that some of Del Toro's was trying to shoplift, but the AVTF intervenes, thanks to Soledad trying to defuse the situation. So unfortunately, Ayala's arrested for obstruction, with Angela helplessly watching, which is shocking. And there was a charity dinner at the Gracie Mansion with Vanessa and Heather, so we would just move forward. Then McDuffie decided to work a little late at her law office when Angela showed up. And yeah, she literally, let's say, comforted her before she decided to show her Hector's military power that was kept by the firm after his death, as Soledad did not want to keep it. So yeah, and talking about the City Without Fears thing that BB made, Blake decided to invite her to his place for dinner and brings up about that video. So yeah, and they're still talking about the Gallo cover up and other stuff, when of which Rivera sees the file on that and really disturbs her, considering her own woman Gallo's staff, as Fisk tells her that she did the right thing. Despite that, he literally killed him. So yeah, then on to this moment, there was some very weird development, as of course Murdoch and Page decided to drink with Josie, reminiscing the old times before the AVTF, which might think, but actually it was Kim and her colleagues who know that Cherry is safe, of course. Yeah, and Urich, of course, did another City Without Fear thing, of which after finishing it, she decides to stop the camera and takes off her mask, determined to keep going in spite of Blake's warning. And there was this. hold on. Vanessa had a nightmare of which she was killed by Floyd Dexter, and yeah, that thing was actually foreshadowing. We're gonna get to that in a moment. And yeah, she still has some fears right now, and so Wilson had have her to get along, and then of course in the end we got this moment here where Daredevil decided to confront the AVTF, saving Josie from being captured, of which that hideout is compromised, with Page taking down an officer coming after her. Well, that's something. And with the AVTF officers being defeated, Daredevil regroups with Page, which takes him to Knickerbocker Village and shows him the AVTF officer that she has managed to capture. That is Officer Saunders, by the way, I think. But anyways, that episode is okay, I might say. A lot of things that really happened. You know, Cherry being still a target and eventually being captured by Bullseye, taken to a safe place. Well, that's something. And seeing that Bullseye is still around, especially when he literally killed 2 AVTF officers, as though, well, that was brutal. But of course, and also, you know, the way that BB did with her City Without Fears thing. Oh, that's not how literally did work, I might say. But what was going on here? Yeah. Also, Murdoch and Page, yes, of course, there are little things that really happen, like somehow they decide to, I might say, hide out, which is very great, especially with the thing that the wig that Kevin was wearing, which is okay though, and literally that Matt literally hide himself in a hoodie, which is interesting, and the way that they fought with the AVTF at the end is crazy, like there. So I don't know what I have to say here. Also, you know, it's really tough to see Angelus's, you know, hold on, dot. Let me check on Soledad for a moment, but oh, Widow and hold on, let me check. Yeah, Soledad's his niece. Yeah, yeah, of course, as you may know, she got captured, and Angela was in horror for that. So she decided to take on the White Tiger mantle. Yeah, that really happened, but yeah, so that episode is pretty much okay though. The fights were kind of a bit insane, especially for what Bullseye did, and also in the end. And also, yeah, it's very shocking to see, you know, Soledad being captured. So that's a B tier for me. There's nothing else mattered, but of course. Then comes episode 3, The Scales and the Sword, of which Matt Murdock and Cameron decided to find some new allies. Okay. So, whatever's going on here, we decided to continue with the end of episode 2, where Cameron shows Daredevil the AVTF officer, that is Saunders, of course. And once Daredevil verifies he's telling the truth, Saunders said that he has been seen on the Northern Star detail and provides Daredevil the key card that provides access, of which Saunders pleads with them to stop Kingpin and the AVTF before Daredevil knocks him out, so he and Page could drop him off. And Heather still had the trauma. Yes, of course. Then she decided to talk to Kristen McDuffie, who's working on her defense with Checker Duquesne. As this trial was moved up to 2 weeks, and you know, the way that they literally talk is kind of a bit crazy. Calling out for the report, and wow, development though, that is kind of a bit crazy. But yeah, McDuffie decided to talk to get an audience with Duquesne, so Cole escorts her to his cell. She's blindfolded and cannot see where she is, which is, yeah. But once she's finally get to talk to Duquesne, Duquesne decides claims that it would be rigged. It brings somehow Fisk to coerce him into funding the port with vitalization project thingy. So yeah, but regardless, she's still determined to defend Duquesne, certain that the prosecution cannot definitely prove that he's who they claim he is. Meanwhile, at the village, Paige is working on their next move, but she is reminding him of that of the Punisher, of which, yeah, that's a little concerning for Matt, but it is. But they decide to discuss about the plans on the Red Hood weapons. But Murdoch remains determined to go in, even though Peach is worried about that. Then comes this. Of course, a couple of government officials said to go on to City Hall to speak to Fisk, but after Page anonymously sent them with a copy of the charter, of which this is kind of bit of a controversial thing, but yeah. Then Buck decided to check in on Daniel and his attempts to find the leverage on McCaffrey, but yeah, and of course, blah 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 blah, and about and Catherine decides to play along with the antics on sketch to find the source of the leak that thing BB did is using, which is what it is. Also, of course, the Vigilante Trials is basically the main thing around. As we know, the People vs. Jack Duquesne begins with Fisk, Murdoch, Page, and the whole city watching the trial closely. So yeah, Hochberg, McDuffie, everyone decided to development though, and despite McDuffie's efforts, that is basically trying to get along, Duquesne was declared guilty and remanded until proper sentencing to Fisk's delight, unfortunately. So yeah, then of course city officials and government officials talking blah 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 before we decide to stop by Mr. Charles finishes unloading the weapons of the Northern Star alongside a worker crew, which is crazy. Then Connor decides to send them, but what really happened is kind of a bit crazy. McDuffie decides to go at the bar, having lost the Kane case, as Paige suddenly bumps into her for some reason, slips her a message to get back to her office now. Then yeah, the McDuffie decides to encounter Daredevil, tries to show that she has nothing to do with his resistance, but he disagrees. Then he asks McDuffie to tell him everything she could about the AVTF base, and even though she was blindfolded, her knowledge is still valuable to him. Then, using McDuffie's intelligence, he decides to infiltrate the base, tracks down the weapon shipment, and he decides to not go to because he decides to liberate the people detained by the AVTF, which is crazy. Like, he decided to free all the people detained, which includes Duquesne and Soledad. Then they decide to join, and they decide to go along, and Daredevil and Duquesne join forces in fighting back against the AVTF, getting Ayala, while Paige gets approached by Angela, who now has the emulator power, offers help to save her aunt and the others, showing Paige that she managed to steal the AVTF's comms. And yeah, there was a huge development, of course. Yeah, of course, they decide to fight each other, and the AVTF got broke down. And yeah, of course. And Ariana Yakovu knew the place where they can hide from that thing, as they decide to go along. But yeah, on the other hand, Daredevil and Paige separate from the others to escape as well, or the AVTF cannot follow them due to their slashing their tires. You know, those things. Then Powell reports to Kingpin that Daredevil liberated the prisoners, but the weapons are still secured back here, which that's a lot. But Daredevil on his way is about to get along, but then Kingpin then gives Powell an order, and he blows up the Northern Star with the workers on board, as Kingpin killed them all. This was a shock ending there. I have no words to say, but this was shocking. Yeah, that's crazy. That's really crazy, but yeah, this was a shocking end to that episode. Okay, let's recap of that. Okay, the craziest part is that moment, that shocking end, but yeah, that really shocked me, the Northern Star being absolutely demolished. Meanwhile, the Daredevil and of course his Resilience crew decide to free all the AVTF captives, whatever they call it, of course, those captives captured by the AVTF, it's kind of a bit of a move for, resistance, which is it is. Yeah, Angela is now the White Tiger, I might say, but it's interesting to see her like that. But yeah, also the drama, that is the trial, is kind of a bit crazy, and it's really shocking to see Duquesne being guilty, but eventually he got escaped thanks to the fact that Murdoch literally saved him. But yeah, this was a crazy episode, like, the trial and the hostage rescue thing, or that really happened all along in one episode, and this was crazy. I have no words to say, but their performance in that episode is crazy, so that's an A-. And yeah, an A- kind of an episode, but of course, now of course, a huge amount of development that really happened in the 4th episode. That is how the gloves off, of which Wilson is about to do a charity boxing event. Yes, he took the wing, and Bullseye adopts a new morning routine for some reason, as he decided to, I kid you not, stopping by his neighbor Smithers and her cat, visits the Bear Air Diner, orders himself a milkshake, and calls the AVTF falsely. Then he literally killed them. Crazy, right? Then, of course, Daredevil and Cameron hide with the liberated detainees, collecting testimonies about their unlawful arrest by the AVTF. Jack decides to tell Daredevil that he would not stick around, but provides them access to his bank account for their cause. Angela then volunteers to help deliver the SD card, but while Page managed to gather her to a source, which technically it was BB a little later, but yeah, and Christopher showed up to their hideout, offering his help as well. And yeah, and also Wilson decided to prepare for the boxing match to support the New York Born Again project thing, and Vanessa is upset that he's sending her away to Albany. Yeah, besides her that he needs her to deal with, you know, the governor, Marge McCaffrey, of course. Yeah, but of course, and Vanessa still thinks that she will still be present at the match to support Wilson, but he insists, so yeah. Also, Sava told Daredevil and others about his work at the now destroyed Star, and how he and Kyoyako are working on Kingpin's weapon smuggling operation. And everything else, he can link it all, so he decided to bring McDuffie in to formally take Sava's testimony as an attorney. And yeah, and Daredevil and Page decide to talk about the boxing match that will take place in a place that holds significant importance to Daredevil, of which the two realize Kingpin's goal was to lure out Bullseye, so Daredevil goes out to find him before that happens. And yeah, on the other hand, Powell and North, of course, AVTF lead a raid on, you know, the law firm that Kirsten worked for in search of Duquesne, but ignoring McDuffie's protest and signing the Save the Streets initiative. But yeah, and then eventually that the AVTF concludes that he's not in office. Crazy, right? Then at the port, Kingpin talks to Buck and to talk to Mr. Charles, the little, which somehow chides Kingpin for not upholding his end at the bargain, which is crazy. And yeah, however, Cashman guns down the agents, the CIA agents or something like that, protecting Mr. Charles. Kingpin tells him to have patience, which frustrates him. Crazy, right? Also, Page, still in hideout, decides to talk to McDuffie, about who's not good about how things are going, and insists about, you know, the safeness, of course. Yeah, and then of course Vanessa went to the capital, New York State Capitol, to talk about, you know, Wilson's corrupt power and to check around. And then Del Toro decided to stop by Yavi, who is somehow working in a whatever this foot thing is, where giving him a start catch the SD card, of which Espinosa agrees to help. So yeah, then Murdoch decides to steal an AVTF uniform, disguise himself as an AVTF officer. This is the police department to examine the diner after Poindexter's attack. Then he decides to go to Clinton Church to pray there. Seminarian approaches him, and then to talk about Poindexter. Then Daredevil finds Bullseye in his apartment, and the two fight, where yeah, and Bullseye ignored Daredevil's words and escapes, heading over to Fogwell's gym to end Kingpin. And we're gonna get to the fight in a moment. McDuffie talked to Sava, where Sava testifies, and eventually discuss the whole testimony thing. And yeah, and we're about to see the fight right now. So Fogwell thingy, yeah. Daniel and BB went in line. Espinosa approaches him, introduces himself as a quote-unquote fan, then slipped the SD card into her pocket, which Blake was unaware of that. Then Fisk prepares up as the fight between him and Michael Melendez is coming around, but he literally took an advantage. Yeah, Cashman did track down Sava and the marshals, intercepting them and killing them. Then Wilson receives confirmation that Sava was dead, goes in for the second round, but Vanessa shows up. Then this moment happened. Wilson gives in to his fury and mercilessly attacks Melendez, pinning him down and knocking him out, winning the match. But then this happened. Vanessa comes up in the ring, but Bullseye crashes the event and attacks the AVTF. Then Daredevil showed up, and yeah, that happened. But stopping Wilson from shooting Bullseye, Daredevil then attacks Bullseye himself and gets both of them out of the gym. But with the AVTF pursuing them, both of them have forced to retreat. And yeah, to resolve, Wilson realizes that when he blocked the paperweight with his belt, one of the shards lock into Vanessa's temple as she collapses. Yeah, she went down, and the next episode really happened a lot. But yeah, this was a lot. Also, there were some very interesting moments that really happened in that episode. Aside from all those stuff, aside from the horror that is the fight, well, Bosai is interesting though. Like in the beginning of the episode, he is acting like a very interesting person, but when he literally killed those AVTF officers, that was a must-see. Interesting that he literally did that. Crazy, right? Then of course he literally decided to take revenge, fighting Fisk, but then Daredevil stopped him, and the two decided to retreat for some reason, despite the you know. But of course, this was a crazy episode. But it's really shocking to see Vanessa being, I don't know. So that's a B+. That's a B+. Nothing else mattered, but this was shocking. Yeah, I might say this was so shocking that it really happened all in one thing. So yeah, and also that very huge development though, that leads up to the next episode. That is titled The Grand Design. That grand design thing is referring to the thing, to the mural that Vanessa bought. And yeah, that was a somber episode, I might say. Meanwhile, the AVTF intensifies the search for these two, Daredevil and Bullseye, of which Daredevil and Bullseye are still in hiding, and from what I can tell, they're still fighting around, and I don't know, they still have a history with them. But on the other hand, let's go back to where we had in the past. We had a Foggy Nelson appearance here as a flashback. So some years in the past though, as referring to what really happened in 2014. Haha, okay. Murdoch and Nelson were working at Landman and SAG as interns, and they decided to start their own legal practice in the future, talking to represent Leona McCoy, arrested for drug possession, whom Nelson recognizes his own acquaintance, which is crazy. But yeah, and Wilson getting informed by James Wesley about the complications regarding McCoy, which is what it is, and Vanessa Mariana, eventually Vanessa Fisk, prepares scene contemporary gallery for an exhibition, and her attention is caught by the grand design called Rabbit in a Snowstorm, which that thing is actually a thing, and which Mariana tries to convince Judy Bush to display the painting, and while Bush declines, Mariana has it displayed anyway. So yeah, and Murdoch and Nelson decide to work on that case, while Jeff Levine makes fun of them for their inability to secure a plea deal, which is weird, right? Then, of course, as Murdoch and Nelson successfully get McCoy out of custody, Wesley approaches Buck to handle the situation and get rid of him. And, yeah, McCoy has greeted by Nelson at his place and gives him the money he and Murdoch had been saving for their own firm, pleading with McCoy to use them to start over, of which he gets emotional. Then he decided to talk about their childhood before McCoy accepts the money and Nelson leaves, of which Nelson wants to Murdoch, who found out about the missing money, and they decide to go to Josie's bar, still looking forward to opening their own firm. Then Cashman decided to come, McCoy was on the run, and now let's head back to, you know, the grand design events. Fisk decided to go to the gallery where an exhibition takes place, as Wesley knows that he tried to arrange a more private showing. Then he caught his attention by Mariana examining that thing. But now, with that matter, it's time to head back to the present. At all those events, Vanessa is taken to Metro General Hospital in critical condition, of which, yeah, and of course, you know, Wilson orders Connor to find both Daredevil and Bullseye, bring them in alive, of which, per his orders, Power and the AVTF intensify his search. And on the other hand, Daredevil gets away with Bullseye, who has been wounded by Vanessa and is losing blood. Then Bullseye tells Daredevil to leave him die. But, yeah, Daredevil has no intention to do so, though. But although Bullseye is not looking forward to surviving, Daredevil claims that he himself seeks penance for almost killing Bullseye after Nelson's death, and keeps killing Bullseye with him, which is kind of crazy. Also, that the one with Blake and Uric, well, yeah, Uric decided to talk about that, and kind of a bit crazy where she literally took the news seriously. And the press reports on Vanessa, and Blake realized that Iris might have leaked it, which is kind of a bit crazy. Then Cashman decided to head over to Blake and decided to grab hot dogs together, but it was actually that they're heading to Albany, while telling him about Cashman's special air service. Then Cashman literally bought a power saw and a shovel. Then whatever this thing is, he literally tried to dispose Christophus' body. Yeah, he brought him to help dispose that. Crazy, right? Then Daredevil decided to bring Bullseye to the church and to think about what to do with his wounds. Then Paul and North show up and go to the seminary and tries to solve them. They forced their way and search the church, of which Daredevil decides to leave Bullseye behind and run, but then changes his mind and returns for him, of which both of them were gone once Power and North get there, and decide to go to Knickerbocker Village to Karen's shock. And and there was this unfortunate moment. Yeah, Venice was awake. She wanted to try pineapple with ice, and talking about her last about some of her greatest moments before this happens. And they recalled the first meeting at the gallery, and that the grand design sudden that led the two of them meet each other. However, Vanessa conduces voices immediately, and sooner or later, although the doctors do everything they can to save her, she flatlines and she passed away, which left Wilson in a horrifying state. And that's unfortunate. That's freaking unfortunate. Yeah. So what really happened is that's unfortunate to see the First Lady of the city, New York, passed. Yeah, but it's interesting to see those throwbacks. We somehow saw Nelson back when he was about to prepped up for his law firm, but it's interesting to see him around, and somehow decide to have a very great development with McCoy, which he somehow did that, and that's an interesting relationship though, which is nice. Also, a nice callback to what really happened from the day that Fisk and then Mariana met and to the point where she dies. Well, yeah, that was a callback, which is very impressive. And it's so emotional to see Mayor Fisk have got through this. Also, Daredevil and Bullseye, well, they still have some grudges, but eventually, yeah. So, there were a couple of things that really happened in that episode, but this was a crazy one, but still was way emotional, especially for the fact that Vanessa passed. So this was an episode, a very emotional one in the center, and I give it a B-. Hey there, thanks for making it so far into this video. Now before I should continue, I'm gonna pause for a moment. Now, by subscribing to this channel, you'll give me more support than right now, because the way you subscribe to this channel, the support that you give to me will be important to my future, of course. I'm currently recovering from the passing of my paternal grandfather, and I just want to get myself back into relevancy now. So if you wanted to continue to support myself as you usually do, then please like this video, comment if you have any suggestions what should I do next, subscribe to this channel, and also to my Eurovision channel where I do Eurovision content, and hit that bell and set it to all, so where you're going to get all notifications when a new sort of videos pops up. And this is you can also check out my socials in my Linktree linked, and this channel's homepage as well, where you can also find all my other socials. Now with that matter, let's get you back into this video. Welcome back, and brace yourselves for a moment of silence, guys, because it's time for a requiem here. Yes, a requiem means that, of course, we're still in mourning about the death of Vanessa, as Fisk's operation is dealt with an irrevocable blow. That is, of course, the death of Vanessa Fisk. Or wait, the destruction of the AVTF weapon supply thing, or whatever this thing is. because yeah, Fisk's life, of course, is kind of a bit crazy, especially dealing with that weapons facility destruction and the death of his wife. Well, the resistance spills over into the streets. Yes, the resistance decided to take a round, but we're gonna get to that in a moment. So, back to what I was saying on the death of Vanessa. Well, Wilson is still not happy. Variety tries to comfort Wilson, and Wilson literally crushes his spine in a fit of rage, killing him and having Bob clean up his body. And Wilson later attends Vanessa's funeral with his inner circle and the members of the task force, reminiscing on his memories with her and placing a rose on the top of her grave. Then on the other hand, there was some very weird development. As we look forward, Daredevil and Cameron watch over an unconscious Benjamin, and Mr. Charles arrives at the port, finds out that the weapons stored there have been taken away. And now we got a Jessica appearance. Jessica was looking after her daughter, Danielle, when a group of armed operatives arrives at their house. While Jones steps outside to fight off the attackers, Danielle picks a grenade that gets thrown inside and plays with it. For some reason, when all the operatives take out, Jones returns to the house and defuses the grenade before the explosion, telling it wasn't a toy. That was great parental guidance. Then we got this moment. Soledad helps Daredevil and Page treating to Poindexter's wound, and Angelo informs Page that while many people are feeling sorry for Kingpin's loss, but there were many people fed up with the constant AVTF rates. Yeah, and after they left, Page tells Daredevil that she might have been wrong and their war would never end until either him or Kingpin are gone. Referring to, Poindexter thing. But Page decides to look over him after Daredevil decides to going out. And yeah, on the other hand, during Vanessa's wake, Marge decided to discuss with Sheila about Fisk's state of mind. And then after which, Cashman talks to Juan Gomez about him potentially replacing McCaffrey as the governor by unconventional methods. Then BB decides to stop by Blake's home doing a birthday, and then decide to celebrate together and spend the day at his mother's house. And Eric suggests tagging along, but Cashman takes Blake for a private talk, which this is a little bit odd. Then, of course, Kingpin receives a call from Mr. Charles to talk about the CIA weapons missing from the port. And yeah, and on the other hand, citizens decide to go at the vigil to pay their respects to Vanessa, but Javi and his friends use the opportunity to start a protest outside of City Hall. And then Daredevil surveys the storage facility and meets with Jones, who tells him about the attack on her house. And it's interesting that Daredevil and Jessica have met once again. These are the one half of the Defenders. We still don't have sides of Luke and what's the other guy? I can't remember, but hold on. Yeah, the Iron Fist, But yeah. On the other hand, they decide to stick around and move, and Daredevil decides to track the stolen weapons before Daredevil and Jones attack the AVTF officers at the facility. And although Connor almost killed Jones by taking advantage, they successfully destroyed the facility and all the weapons inside. So, yeah. And also Heather decides to leave the wig, heavily affected by Vanessa's death, comes to the bedroom at the Gracie Mansion while the memories of Muse overwhelm her. Then Cashman decides to call him, and as Glenn tells him about Muse choking her, Cashman takes her hands and places them on his neck, finding her to recreate what Muse did to her with him. Of which Glenn briefly chokes Cashman, gets emotional, and yeah, that was a way to comfort, but yeah, Eric then tell Blake on the way to an island to talk about the raids not helping in situations, saying that while Fisk is simply now, it might not last long. So yeah, while Paulo and North witness the aftermath of the attack of the warehouse, they decide to roll out a deal with the protests outside the City Hall, where he also approaches Saunders. We're finding him with a replacement for his skill that he supposedly quote-unquote lost. Then Poindexter notices that she's holding her gun, says that she's free to kill him now, of course, that he killed Vanessa. And, Paige decided, he told Paige that Foggy paid for his freedom, of which Poindexter bounces out for by killing Vanessa, and now Paige could balance it all out by killing him. But Daredevil decides to stop her right as she takes her shot, of which Page lashes out at Daredevil for always protecting their enemies like Kingpin and Poindexter, and pleads with him to let her take the burden of killing Poindexter, and Daredevil was taken aback by her words. And he bitterly says that Christophe was literally dead, likely, reaffirming her stance that they cannot bring Kingpin down by their current methods. And then the protest came around. Yeah, and of course, Eric decided to celebrate with that, but Eric privately texted Mitchell Ellison to scope about his decision to drop from re-election, but then Blake's child room notices that and changed her mind. But yeah, and as the two are having a moment, Blake confronts her about the SD card he found in her pocket. And yeah, and say that he might not be able to protect her anymore as Cashman has Eric in his sights. And we still have, you know, the protests still going on, and yeah, and while Kingpin watches over from the protest from his office, well, Cashman informs him that McAfee has pulled her support after Mr. Joseph's visit, and they had a meeting with the AG scheduled, which is good for that matter, but still not great for Fisk. While on the other hand, the AVTF host him off soon after they, you know, but Kingpin decides to leave City Hall and comes to his underground hideout sitting in front of that grand design thing that I mentioned earlier. And Daredevil decides to, I kid you not, stop by a hideout offering his condolences before deciding to fight out. Yeah. And they literally talk about the protesters and the officers, and then a lot of things. Then Paul receives a call from Cashman, confronts Saunders, killing him, and he knew about his betrayal. Lord is shocked, but Paul simply places that on vigilantes and orders the AVTF to use force. Then Daredevil tries to get to Kingpin and asking him to imagine if they never met at his hideout again. And as Nelson and Vanessa could still be alive, but Kingpin loses his temper when he matches his wife. Then they fought, and yeah, the weapon into a snowstorm was damaged, which enrages Kingpin even more, and he beats Daredevil down, but then fights back, defeats Kingpin in a brutal showdown. However, they somehow did not win, or something like that, whatever is going on here. But then the confrontations continued. Espinosa gets attacked, struck down, and Pages lost her wig, and that allows Powell to recognize her and takes her under arrest. This was another cliffhanger moment there, but so shocking. And what really happened in that episode was, you know, sort of revenge. You know, Wilson is, of course, still and over after the passing of his wife, and seeing that Jessica is now reconciled again with Daredevil, it's interesting to see them reunited and a sudden development though, which is interesting. Also, there were some moments that I had to discuss here. So yeah, hold on that thought. Let me look. Okay, this is kind of a bit odd to say the least, but let me check. So the protesters development though, and also let me look. The way that they literally still talk about Poindexter being still that thing, well, that was crazy. And yeah, but of course the way that Daredevil did with the AVTF storage facility thing, and you know, talking to Kingpin and fighting him, well, that's something. But at least this was a way to show some whatever this thing is. But this was a revenge, because it is what it is. But what really happened is kind of a bit crazy. So nothing else to say except that this was an A-. What a crazy one, especially for the fact that all those really happened since the death of Vanessa. But yeah, let's move on now to the Hateful Darkness, which is the penultimate episode, of which a trial that is the people versus Karen Page, close to Mads' heart, grabs the city's attention. And then this happened. So Cameron was arrested, detained at the 15th precinct. Kingpin comes along personally to see Paige at her cell, calling her a criminal, mocking her for getting into it out of love. But Paige notices that he is scared. So yeah, then Jessica confronts Mr. Charles about the attack on her and her daughter, to which he claims that it was a mistake and he only wanted to make Jones back off. So yeah, it's kind of a bit crazy, but Jones decided to bring up his deal with Kingpin, and he said that the CIA no longer supports him and that McCaffrey wants him gone, which spells trouble for her. Then Jones decides to meet with Murdoch. Then Sherry decides to inform Murdoch that Page is detained at the 15th precinct as Kingpin prepares to indict her in her trial, of course, the Vigilante Trials. Then Sherry warns him that since Kingpin is doing it legitimately, then Daredevil frees Benjamin of his restraints, offering him a chance to commit one good deed that he wanted to do. And Daredevil says that while he hates Poindexter for what he did to Nelson, Latham, and Nadeem, he knows that he needs to forgive him. And Poindexter replies that he would not give Daredevil any promises, but still asks what does he want to do. Then Page is approached by Brett Mahoney, who will pull strings as chief of detectives to get Page out of the 15th precinct. Temporarily frees Page and brings her to see Daredevil behind the precinct and told about that she cannot run from Kingpin anymore. Then they of which after she realizes what he means and tries to stop them, but Daredevil insists that he can do it, after which Mahoney brings Page back to her cell. Then Kingpin works with Hawkberg and checking to talk about the trial. Then Glenn decides to visit the office to check on Kingpin, asking that how that he's feeling now that his wife is dead. So now he's upset at love with his person though. So but back to the craziness. Blake keeps BB at his house, but Blake's still angered about that. And then eventually it was decided that Blake suggests to hide somewhere far where Cashman could not able to find them, and tells Ubik that he would find a way to escape overseas. However, he actually texts Cashman the address where he would bring Ubik while he and Kingpin watched the trial unfold, of which Page was brought to the Supreme Court to stand trial with McDuffie acting as an attorney, while Hawkbird acts as a prosecutor. McDuffie is adamant to not only prove Page's innocence, but also the legitimacy of the court in the entire initiative. But then Murdoch shows up in the courtroom and asks McDuffie as co-counsel to Kingpin's outrage. Shockingly, everyone was shocked that Murdoch was actually found by himself. Crazy, right? Then he helps McDuffie by cross-examining testimonies of Power and North, trying to establish the illicit nature of Kingpin's reign. Then, moving her to the designated address, Blake tells her that it's not just Kingpin and Cashman and that he himself is not innocent. Then he admits to Uric that he helped Cashman dispose of Salvus's body, which he still cannot get over. Then Uric realizes that Blake is leading her to her death and tries to plead with him not to follow that path. Of which Blake decides to unable to hand Uric over and tell her to run while he goes to see Cashman, which is basically what it is. While the trials are joined for the day, Cherry, Angie, and their NYPD allies escort their Murdoch and Matafi out. However, the AVTF attacks them, so they decide to, I kid you not, fight out, and Murdoch got shot. Despite being rounded, decided to pray in the Clinton church before Jones finds him. And as McCaffrey works for suspension, someone attacked her, but then Bullseye showed up. Yeah, literally. Then Glenn talks to Page, the precinct to conduct a psychological evaluation. And he indirectly talking about the Murdoch thing, but then Glenn retaliates by mentioning Kevin and James who both died because of her making comments. And this was huge. And after that, Glenn falls for Page's provocations and snaps, attacking Page physically and left. And then there was this. Blake tells Cashman that Uric would not be coming, and Cashman attacks Blake and beats him down. But then this moment here, because Blake replies that it would not be long until Cashman himself was on the other hand of the gun, talking about Cashman giving him one last chance to give Uric away. But then Cashman hesitates, he ends up shooting Blake in his head, and he left. So we got the Deputy Mayor Communications died. That's whatever, but what was going on here was just crazy. So that was part one of the madness, that is the trial, the people versus Karen Page. And this was a huge one, especially for the fact that Karen is still feeling the side effects of it. Jessica and Murdoch did a little moment there earlier in the episode. It's interesting to see that Benjamin and Daredevil have some developments still, ever since Daredevil still has some despices. But it's interesting that they still discuss a little bit though, but at least there's something. Also, the trial is kind of that was a lot of drama there. You know, Murdoch showing up and everything else. Yeah, that's a lot of things. And also, yeah, that really happened. Yeah, this was crazy. Also, the manhunt for Urich is kind of a bit crazy though. Daniel decided to let her go. Decided to leave BB behind to hide, while Daniel decided to confront Cashman. Then he died because of him. So that was a crazy episode, I might say. But yeah, this was shocking a lot. But I might say that that was a lot of things that really happened though. But yeah, this was a crazy episode though. A little bit of a development, but it is what it is. So that was an B tier kind of an episode. But the drama stirs up from here because we're getting to the season finale. Yes, I'm talking about the season finale here. That is titled The Southern Cross, of which we finally got to see what really happened in that episode. So what really happened here is that the People vs. Karen pitch continues, although Karen and Kirsten are concerned due to Matt being absent. Yeah, while the fact that Murdoch was at Knickerbocker Village being treated by Jessica, Murdoch asks Jones about her decision to stay in New York, to which she replies that the situation is getting out of control. Murdoch thinks that Fisk would not kill Page until he has Murdoch on his sides, which is where he needs to be. Then Fisk asks Cashman if Daniel handed over BB as promised, but that didn't. So yeah, Cashman informs that Murdoch survived the last night. Fisk shows him a document he received, which is whatever. Then we got the continuation of that. Heather decides to testify while Benjamin Hawk refuses to paint her. Murdoch then showed up kind of a bit late, objecting to Glenn's claims as prejudicial. Then Hawkberg asked to read an excerpt from her book, which describes mask as a way to reveal a person's true face, which is weird. That's basically what I did during my last November, I might say, but yeah, I don't want to talk about it. But anyways, McDuffie questions Glenn, accusing her of using physical force against Page during the evaluation, which she denies. Murdoch interjects, pointing at Glenn's claim that Page is hiding behind Daredevil's mask, saying that Glenn herself is hiding behind the Fisk's administration. Murdoch and Hawkwood discuss the defense witness, and Hawkwood has no objections, though, thinking that Murdoch's sabotaging himself. But then, Murdoch decides to call another witness. That is Fisk. You heard it right. Wilson frickin' Fisk. And as a show of power, Connor and a squad of AVTF officers also entered the courtroom to accompany Fisk. Then he literally did a speech about his faith in legal institutions. So yeah, while the trial unfolds, AVTF officers stationed in the building across the Supreme Court as an bullseye impersonated a person's sniper rifle to execute Fisk's plan. However, the real bullseye appears and kills them all, taking over their position. Somehow we got a poster here. Anyways, Fisk tells the court about the Sabre Streets Initiative and its goal to protect the city from vigilante violence, which already claimed the lives of Foggy, Alan, and, you know, Vanessa. Murdoch reminds the court how Fisk called him a hero, while Hawkwood objects. Murdoch claims that his all ties to Fisk's anti-vigilante platform, under which Page is being tried. So, yeah, Murdoch then questions if Fisk's initiative really makes the city safer, pointing out the AVTF raids on civilians, out-of-Hawkberg objects again. And as the cross-examination continues, Fisk realizes where Murdoch's going with this is because of Fisk's scheme to transport weapons on board the Northern Star. Then questions about claims that it was Daredevil sank the ship, submitting Fisk officers' recorded testimony as evidence. So, yeah, and that the evidence somehow worked, but still, it was admissible or not. But, yeah, and then that clip played around, claiming that he and Kaiwaka were involved in Fisk's plan to illegally transport weapons through New York. Then Hawkwood argues that the testimony is not worth without being corroborated by another witness who was aboard the ship. And Murdoch says that he intends to do exactly that, asking to establish that Daredevil indeed was at the ship as he claimed. But then Jones and McCaffrey entered the courtroom witnessing the proceedings. Then Murdoch presses Fisk on everything from his calling Murdoch a hero, and there's alleged involvement in the scheme. Hawkwood advises Fisk not to answer, but then this happened. Murdoch does not let go and insists that Daredevil is the one who can sufficiently prove Fisk's wrongdoings. As Fisk himself reported his presence on the ship, Fisk calls Murdoch a fool, and he disagrees and turns to the court, revealing himself to be that. You absolutely heard it right. He literally revealed his identity as that vigilante. He literally shocked the whole court, causing an uproar there, and dispelling any doubts that Murdoch is Daredevil. Murdoch claims that Fisk facilitated the smuggling of illegal weapons, which he provided to the task force. Then Murdoch insists that the court Fisk formed to further his criminal agenda and did not have any legitimacy to judge Page's guilt. Waters sides with Murdoch and grants Murdoch's motion to dismiss the trial would be used in light of uncovered evidence. Then Page blocked free. Although she and Murdoch celebrate, Fisk is certain that despite everything, Murdoch won literally nothing there. But then this happened. Trial concludes. McCaffrey tells Fisk that AG Severat filed charges against him, informing that Fisk that the assassin he sent after her live and admitted to everything. So yeah, but then coming from Watered, he literally, after a brief exchange with Joe, she confronts Murdoch, but then the fake bullseye takes out of Murdoch, but then the real bullseye announces himself. Yes, and aims at Fisk. Before that moment, Cashman shoots Fisk from bullseye's bullet, after which the AVTF locks down the building with everyone still inside. Then, Murdoch, Page, McDuffie, Jones, and McCaffrey were basically still stuck inside. The latter considers calling the National Guard, of which Kingpin is addressing the city, claiming that they're under siege. But then, city without fuel goes live. Then BB decides to publicly repair herself. Yeah, because of that thing, that truth reveal, the people of New York choose their sides, sparking up icing as the resistance gathers at the courthouse. Then, of course, Glenn, looking at the wounded Cashman, gives orders and blah 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 blah. Daredevil suits up, takes Jones with him to fight off. Sheila gets a call from Stepward, but he refuses again. And then, this development. Cherry, Mahoney, and Kim confront the AVTF. Then, Powell orders Cole North to open fire with them, but then Angela and Soledad intervene, reminding them of Hector was innocent though. Then North starts to have doubts about Powell's claims that Ayala killed his then partner, Kel Shanahan. Well, Powell dismisses him and orders to execute the NYPD officers among the protesters. Then North cannot bring himself to kill fellow policemen, and when Powell tries to do it himself, North knocks him out. Then he assumes the command and orders the AVTF to stand down, letting police and protesters inside. Well, since Powell is a bit corrupt there, but anyways, and the fight continues. Yes, Rivera tells Kingpin about Star Force's offer, while Daredevil, Jones, and White Tiger fight with the AVTF officers. Kingpin attacks the protesters. Eventually, it leads up to the lobby where Kingpin tells protesters that they are wrong about him, and he gave up everything he had for the sake of the city. And as the protesters overwhelm him, trying to kill that, Daredevil and Jones interfere, saving his life, and he implores Kingpin to accept the deal and leave the city that he had suffered much because of their fight. Kingpin was angered, attempts to grant him grace, but Daredevil tells him that they had a chance to let New York live in peace that neither of them can achieve. Overlooking the New Yorkers who were out for his blood, Kingpin accepts Daredevil's offer and resigned. Eventually left New York. And then, yeah, and everything is about to head back to normal. Everything gets around as Murdoch and Page go on a date before the NYPD arrives to arrest Murdoch for the crimes he committed as Daredevil, and he allows himself to be apprehended without resistance. Jones then brings his daughter to the alias investigations office, where Luke Cage eventually visited them. Then he tells Jones that the CIA allowed him to return to his family, as Mr. Charles recruited Bullseye to work in Cage's stead. Then Uric is eventually brought on by the Borden, who gives her a box of her uncle's belongings. Then Glenn puts on uses mask, seeing her own face in the mirror. Then this happened. So at the end, Murdoch taken to Rikers Island to serve his sentence, where Powell, North, and the other officers were impersonated. Then Fisk decided to relocate to his private island, and this place called whatever this thing is. Yeah, it's raining right now, but yeah, left all alone. Still being, yeah. So this was a huge season finale. This was a crazy one, especially in this part. But what really happened, it is so crazy that it all really happened in one whole episode. The whole thing really happened in one episode. The trial literally concluded when Daredevil is literally Murdoch in front of everyone in the court. This is crazy. And also, not only that, but Fisk was also there for literally no reason. And yeah, this is crazy. And also, the protesters have stumbled upon thanks to the fact that BB literally revealed the whole truth, like literally. And that literally took defensive. That was crazy. Literally crazy. Thanks a lot. But yeah, the resistance have intensified. Literally intensified. And it's really shocking that all of them really happened in one whole thing. But then this happened. Daredevil and Kingpin decide to end the war and decide that Kingpin decided to leave New York behind and decide to leave. Of which we got an election going on there. And then that was unfortunate to see Daredevil, or Murdoch in this case, being arrested for, you know. And yeah, everything's now back to normal. It seems that Daredevil is finally having the justice he deserves, I might say. But it is what it is. But yeah, it's really interesting to see those developments going along. Wilson is still being, you know, yeah, now he's feeling the side effects of it. Now feeling alone and trying to comfort himself on his own island. So yeah. And yeah, that was a lot of things that really happened in that episode. But I don't have anything to say about it because that was crazy. That was crazy. I don't have words. I really don't have words because this was yet another hour-long video that I have done here, and this was a crazy one. I don't have anything to say here except that this was an 8-tier of an episode. This was crazy. Freaking crazy. Freaking crazy. Yeah. So what I had to say for this season, revenge. That's only one word that I can describe for this season. Revenge. I repeat, revenge. What really happened in that season was revenge. But what really happened in the past few and a couple of episodes. You see, after the events of, you know, the death of Nelson, yeah, everybody is having a lot of huge development, especially with the fact that Fisk is now mayor. At least until that happened. But yeah. Last things that really happened. I need to take a breather here. Alright, so after a little of an short period though, I decided to let's get back to this. So anyway, so whilst I was saying this was revenge, as I said, this was a total revenge on what really happened. So as you can see, the fight scenes were very crazy. You know, Daredevil, Bullseye, Daredevil, Fisk, everything you need to know is right there. And the resistance of the AVTF, that's totally crazy. It's still bloody, it's still crazy, but it's what it is. But, you know, a lot of things can really happen, of course. It was brutal. Also, the trials were also a huge drama. First, of course, is the Duquesne trial. And then we got the Page trial, of course, which was a huge amount of trouble that really happened during the trial, which was totally crazy. And I mean a lot of things that really happened during that trial, but it is what it is, because this was a huge amount of drama that really happened all in one go. And I have to say, this was crazy. A crazy development. And yeah, needless to say that a lot of things really happened in one episode, one season, for that matter. But yeah, and you know, the developments of these characters were kind of bit crazy. So let's just discuss a couple of few here from all of the cast here. We're gonna talk about Daredevil and Kingpin in a little moment. So yeah, both sides is character development is seemingly now like that he decided to take on the revenge that he took. So yeah, he is seeking a little assassin development though, because yeah, and he still has some huge grudges with Daredevil, at least for now. But at least he is trying to get along because he did have some low relations despite the bad reception that is, the fight scenes and whatever this thing is. But Bullseye in this season is alright. Nothing to say about that. Also, there were some very great developments in some episodes that really happened, but we're gonna get to that in a moment because we got some huge ones, as I might say. So, outside from Bullseye, we got some developments from other characters, such as, Angela, of which Angela's character developments has been changed because thanks to the fact that her aunt was taken by the AVTF, she decided to take on the White Tiger mantle that her uncle used to have, and this is basically revenge on what she did, on what the AVTF did to her family, I might say. But this is a way to take the revenge that. And also we got some very huge developments on some other fans here. Let's just move on to this guy. I don't have any words to say about here, but we got some huge developments on Karen and Jessica, the two people that were hugely involved in this. Karen is basically taking on the side that is, taking revenge on the death of her partner, one of her partners, Nelson, of which Nelson did appear in a couple of episodes here, at least one episode, but in a flashback, I might say. But the way that she literally took revenge is kind of a bit crazy, and she has been a very active part of the Resistance for a little while, of which she had a very great character development. She still has some grudges with Poindexter, but she did have some great relationship with Murdoch, or Daredevil in this case. But it's interesting to see her getting through it. But seeing her being detained by the AVTF and eventually got freed, well, that's something. But then we got Jessica, who somehow came out of nowhere and decided to help on with the Resistance, which is kind of a bit crazy. But it's interesting to see her come around, which is nice. But the way that she fought and everything else, this was very interesting. And seeing her that she is literally Sophia Coulson lookalike from my own perspective, this is very interesting here. Thank you so much, Kristen Witter, for that. Now we got the main thing here. Of course, we got Murdoch and Fisk. Now let's get started with the Kingpin, of course. The Fisk, as you may know, is of course, as you may know, it's a co-op main, as you know it, but he still has some grudges with the Vigilante development. But once the death of his wife shocked everything, well, that changed everything. He's now seeking revenge. He's now seeking whatever is going on here. But and he's not happy with this. But the way that he literally accepted the offer of the state of the AG and eventually Daredevil changed that. So he finally decided to take cover and comfort himself out. Which is I might say, I don't know what I have to say here, but it's really shocking to see Fisk going through his emotional development ever since the death of his wife. But it's so emotional to see him go through this. But the way that he fought with Daredevil is crazy. But speaking of Daredevil, and this was the main guy here, he has a lot to explain here. So at first Daredevil is thinking that he is looking great with the Resistance despite the AVTF and Fisk. Well, it seems that everything's still spinning around with the huge amount of developments that really happened, and especially the fact that a lot of things have changed him. The trial, everything else, and the way that he literally revealed himself as Daredevil, this was crazy. Literally crazy, but it is what it is. But it's really shocking to see him going through this, and he decided to get the justice he deserves as he was taken to Rikers Island. So this was, I don't know what I have to say. There was a huge amount of character development with this guy here. And yeah, the events have literally made it too emotional for a sense of a second season of some sorts. So I don't have anything to say here except that this was huge. This was a huge amount of development that really happened all in one season. And I have anything to say here. Character development gone crazy. The fights gone crazy. The events gone to a huge amount of drama around. And this was an A-tier caliber season. So for Daredevil Born Again Season 2, as I said, I have decided to rank it an A-tier. For all of the amount of events that going on here, this was the most craziest season I've ever seen in my life. Especially the fact that it is basically what it is, but a lot of blood and everything else that literally happened all in one go. So that's basically what it is. So with that mattered, I have enough of this show. We still have a third season planned yet, but we will gather more info on that in the ensuing couple of days here, or weeks or some so, or we'll find out ahead because we have a huge amount of it is. So yeah, this was a crazy episode that, as you may know, that was huge. That was huge. This was totally huge. I don't have anything to say here, but this was crazy. Very, very crazy. I have a lot of things to mention here because the anti-vigilante campaign and Red Hook Freeport scheme, everything else, very, very crazy. Like, totally crazy. Like, I don't have anything to say here. So crazy that I somehow managed to, I kid you not, do everything all of them here, but very crazy. I have enough. I really have enough. So with that matter, thank you for watching. I have enough. I'll see you all in my next review or whatever is going on here. Peace!